My daughter, the one I lived for, accidentally sent a voicemail detailing her plan to steal my home and cheer my death. The sound of her laughter was the sound of my life shattering. I am Eleanor. I was 66 years old, and until that Tuesday afternoon, I believed I was living the quiet, earned twilight of a life defined by hard work and sacrifice. I had spent 3 decades of my existence cleaning the mansions of others, polishing silver and scrubbing marble floors, all to ensure my one and only child, Tiffany, would never have to bow her head in service. My reward was this small, comfortable home, my sanctuary, my sole asset, and the constant, if often strained, presence of Tiffany and my son-in-law, Jake. I remember the light that day. It was late afternoon, the sun slanting through the sheer curtains in my modest yet meticulously kept living room, bathing the antique rug in a deceptive warmth. I was sitting in my favorite velvet armchair, the one I had insisted on keeping after my husband passed, sipping a chamomile tea. Tiffany and Jake had gone out early that morning for what they vaguely described as business errands. Their presence in my life, though intended to be a comfort, had become a dull, persistent ache, a constant, unspoken demand for resources I barely possessed. My phone, a rather outdated model that Tiffany had grudgingly gifted me 2 Christmases ago, buzzed on the side table. It was a push notification, a new voicemail from Tiffany. I reached for it, my fingers already trembling slightly from the chronic ache of years spent scrubbing floors on my knees. I pressed the play button, ready for the usual mild annoyance. What poured out of that tiny speaker was not annoyance, but an instant lethal dose of pure venom. Jake, I swear I cannot stand having the old woman in the house for another day. The voice was unmistakably Tiffany's, but the tone was grotesque, sharp, dismissive, laced with a contempt that felt like a physical blow to my chest. The old woman. That was me. The woman who had sacrificed her youth, her body, her every dream for her. The breath hitched in my throat. I sat rigid, unable to move, rooted to the chair by a paralyzing cocktail of disbelief and immediate, visceral horror. She's a total nuisance, Tiffany continued, her voice rising with exasperation, the sound of a spoiled child complaining about a broken toy. She gets into everything we do, always asking questions. And honestly, we've spent enough money subsidizing her existence. My hands tightened on the ceramic mug until my knuckles turned white. Subsidizing my existence. My meager social security and small pension were the only things paying the household bills. I hadn't asked them to move in when their business failed last year. They had insisted, claiming they wanted to take care of Mom. Now I understood. They wanted to manage me, not care for me. Then Jake's voice cut in, muffled but clearly recognizable with a low, supportive chuckle. I know, Tiff. We need a solution, and fast. Did you find anything? Yes. And it's perfect, she practically crowed. I've been looking at a few cheap places on the outskirts of the county. I found one that only costs $800 a month. $800. That number hit me with a shocking clarity. That was precisely the amount of my monthly contribution to their household fund. They were discussing replacing me, the mother, the primary bill payer, with a cold, sterile room on the outskirts of town, all while using my own money to finance the replacement. The irony was a bitter, choking ash in my mouth, but the sheer calculation of their plot was only just beginning to unfold. The true motive, the deep, dark avarice that stained their souls, was revealed next. And Cynthia already explained how we can get the house transferred to our name without the old lady realizing it. Tiffany's voice dropped conspiratorially, the excitement barely contained. It's going to be about $500 in bribes and fees, but Jake, it's worth it. Once the deed is in our name, we can finally refinance and pull out the equity to pay off those crushing credit card debts. No more pretending. My mind, previously paralyzed, snapped into hyperfocus. Cynthia. That was Tiffany's second cousin, the one who worked at the county clerk's office. Bribes, fees, transfer the deed. This wasn't just about moving me out. This was a deliberate criminal conspiracy to commit elder fraud and steal the only piece of security I had left in the world. The home I had fought for, bled for, and kept pristine. They saw it only as collateral, a number on a ledger. I heard the chilling detail of their logistical plan next, delivered with a callous efficiency that belied the years of seemingly loving daughterly care. "I've already contacted the director at the St. Jude home," Tiffany said, her voice dropping to a smooth, convincing cadence. "I told him Mom was showing early signs of senile dementia, that it was getting dangerous for her to be unsupervised. He was so sympathetic. Tuesday we'll tell her it's a routine medical appointment, maybe a specialist for her old knee pain, and we'll just drop her off. By the time she realizes she's signed the initial admission papers, we'll have temporary guardianship based on the fraudulent medical reports Cynthia helped us procure." Fraudulent medical reports. They weren't just destroying my financial future. They were assassinating my character, attempting to certify me as mentally incompetent, rendering me a non-person legally, all to justify their wicked plan. The injustice was so vast, so profound, that it superseded the pain, replacing it with a cold, blinding rage. And then the final crushing blow. Jake returned to the topic of my demise, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather. "Yeah, and let's not forget the life insurance, Tiff. That policy is still in our names. If something happens to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, it really wouldn't be so bad. We need that payout to get us totally clear." And then came the sound that finally broke me. Tiffany's high, light, utterly triumphant laughter. A laugh completely devoid of maternal love, filial respect, or even basic human decency. It was the sound of a butcher celebrating a successful kill. The message ended abruptly. The cold, sterile silence of the room rushed back in, deafening me. I realized that my own daughter, the child of my heart, had not only planned my total destruction, but had accidentally sent the entire unedited confession straight to my phone. A glitch in their system, a moment of negligence, had granted me a terrifying window into the abyss of their souls. I sat there, the chamomile tea long forgotten, a stone settling heavily where my heart used to be. The pain was no longer sharp. It was a vast frozen plain. The woman who had birthed Tiffany was gone. In her place, a cold, calculating strategist was being forged in the fires of betrayal. They thought I was an old woman, helpless, forgetful, easily manipulated. They were about to learn that they had fundamentally underestimated the fierce protective strength of a mother scorned. The fight for my dignity had just begun, and I intended to win every round. The sheer mass of the revelation kept me anchored in the armchair for what felt like hours. I was a casualty on a battlefield I hadn't known I was fighting. The rage had cooled, leaving behind a hard, crystalline core of absolute resolve. They wanted a war? They would get one. But it would be fought on my terms, silent, meticulous, and devastatingly legal. The immediate reaction, the urge to scream, to confront them, to fling the phone at the wall, was a fleeting weakness I instantly suppressed. A victim screams. A strategist waits. My advantage lay solely in their arrogance, their certainty that I was oblivious. They had revealed their entire hand. Now it was my turn to fold mine close to my chest. I pulled myself up, every movement stiff and deliberate. My first action was not emotional, but tactical. I needed to secure the evidence. I carefully saved the voicemail to my phone's local storage, and then, using the limited technical knowledge I possessed, I forwarded a copy of the raw audio file to my long-forgotten, highly secured personal email address, ensuring a digital paper trail outside of their control. This voicemail was not just proof. It was my life raft, my sword, and my shield. Next, I needed information, the kind they thought I was too frail or too senile to manage. I retrieved my personal lockbox from the back of the closet, its contents guarded by a small, rusty key I kept hidden in an old shoe. Inside were the documents they needed to steal, the original deed to the house, the signed life insurance policy forms, and most critically, my current driver's license and passport, which contained my authentic signature. I spread these documents out on the dining table, the same table where Tiffany and Jake ate my meticulously prepared meals every night. I studied my signature, the elegant loop of the E and the firm slash of the R in Eleanor. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that the documents they had submitted to the bank and the county clerk's office were forgeries. The difference would be subtle. They wouldn't risk an obvious alteration, but an expert eye would spot the hesitation, the uncertainty, the lack of muscle memory inherent in a copy. My mind raced through the logistics of their deceit. They had moved with precision. The fraudulent bank letter allowing access to my accounts, the forged medical reports, the bribe to Cynthia at the County Clerk's office. This was not a moment of desperation. This was a calculated long-term campaign of financial and emotional abuse. I spent the rest of the evening constructing a detailed, chronological timeline of their residency. The day they moved in, claiming financial hardship. The first time Tiffany helped me with my bills, gaining access to my account numbers. The dates of the suspicious withdrawals, small, incremental amounts intended not to alarm me. And the precise day Tiffany mentioned a lovely new retirement community, laying the groundwork for the institution. This document, typed out on my old laptop, became my first legal brief. It wasn't about seeking revenge. It was about seeking justice and survival. They had planned to turn my life into a prison. I was going to turn their criminal negligence into an ironclad legal cage. When Tiffany and Jake returned home later that evening, I was already back in my armchair, reading a book of classic poetry, appearing exactly as the frail, predictable old woman they believed I was. My performance had to be flawless. "Hi, Mom," Tiffany chirped, her voice dripping with the fake sweetness I now recognized as a poisonous coating. "How was your day? Everything okay?" I looked at them, meeting their eyes with a calm they mistook for senility, or perhaps the days of a pleasant afternoon nap. Their faces were flushed with a mixture of excitement and nervous relief, the thrill of conspirators whose plan was almost complete. "Very well, honey," I replied, my voice steady, slightly soft, betraying nothing of the inferno raging inside me. "I took care of exactly what I needed to. By the way, some people are coming to visit us tomorrow morning. I hope you'll be here to receive them." Jake exchanged a confused look with Tiffany. "What people, Eleanor? Is it the gardener?" I allowed a slow, mysterious smile to curve my lips. A smile they interpreted as my usual, slightly eccentric old age. "Oh, you'll see. They are people who are going to help us clarify some important things about our family's future." I watched them during dinner, which they ate with an air of barely contained anticipation. They laughed too loudly at Jake's poor jokes. Tiffany was constantly checking her phone, presumably communicating with Cynthia or the home director. I ate very little, every bite feeling like a lead weight. The silence between bites was not peace. It was the tense, vibrating silence before a hurricane. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I did not sleep out of peace, but out of the profound, dark certainty of what must be done. They had stolen my peace, my home, and my dignity. Tomorrow, I would begin the meticulous process of reclaiming it all. The storm was coming, and they would be standing directly in its path, completely unprepared for the ferocious, focused intensity of a mother fighting for her very existence. My mother's ghost, I felt, was standing beside me whispering, "Fight, Eleanor, fight." The thought of the battle ahead was the only lullaby I needed. The sun would rise on a new reality. The next morning, I moved before the sun fully cleared the horizon. I wore a simple but impeccable charcoal gray suit, a choice designed to project authority, not vulnerability. I left the house before Tiffany or Jake stirred, carrying my lockbox and my phone, which now held a literal recording of their treachery. My first destination was the downtown community bank, where I had maintained my accounts for over 20 years. I bypassed the tellers and went directly to the desk of Brenda Miller, the branch manager, a woman in her late 40s with a sharp mind and a kind, no-nonsense demeanor. "Brenda," I said, my voice low and urgent, placing a neatly folded copy of my original house deed and my ID on her desk. "I need your immediate private assistance. I believe I am a victim of severe elder financial fraud, perpetrated by my own daughter and son-in-law." Brenda's professionalism instantly took over. Her face, initially one of polite confusion at my early arrival, hardened into concern. "Eleanor, please sit down. Tell me everything." I relayed the story, editing out only the most painful emotional details and focusing strictly on the actionable facts. The voicemail confession, The mention of forged documents, the unauthorized withdrawals, and the planned institutionalization. I presented the timeline I had meticulously prepared. The key evidence, Brenda, is the forged power of attorney document I believe my daughter Tiffany submitted here recently. She needed it to gain access to my accounts. Brenda immediately accessed her secure system. Her eyes scanned the digital file. Then she printed 2 documents: the alleged power of attorney, POA, and a standard bank form containing my last known authentic signature from 6 months prior. She placed them side by side on the heavy oak desk. "Eleanor, look carefully." I leaned in, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Tiffany's forgery was good, alarmingly good. She had obviously practiced. But my years of handling delicate documents and signing contracts had honed my eye. The difference, though minute, was glaring under scrutiny. "The E in Eleanor," I whispered, pointing a steady finger. "Mine is a confident single flourish. Tiffany's is done in 3 slightly halting strokes. And the dot over the I in Tiffany on the POA, it's too perfectly round. My dot is always a quick, sharp strike, slightly oval." Brenda nodded slowly, her expression grim. "You're absolutely right. An ordinary teller would miss it, but side by side, the lack of natural flow is obvious. The pressure points are different. This signature is not yours. This is irrefutable evidence of a felony." The confirmation hit me with a wave of unexpected exhaustion. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was real. A bank manager, a professional, had confirmed the crime. Tears, hot and surprising, pricked at the corners of my eyes. I blinked them away fiercely. There was no time for weakness. "Brenda, I need you to do 3 things immediately before they suspect anything," I commanded, my voice regaining its steel. "First, I need you to digitally capture this forged document and place it and the recording of this meeting into a secure evidence file. Second, I need you to freeze Tiffany and Jake's access to all my accounts, including the joint accounts they persuaded me to open." "Done," Brenda confirmed, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Third, I need to secure the remaining funds. According to my records, they have already siphoned $8,750 over the last 6 months through small, seemingly legitimate withdrawals. I want the remaining balance of my savings, every single penny, immediately transferred out of this bank and into a new, highly restricted account at a different institution they have no knowledge of." "That is a wise, tactical move, Eleanor," Brenda said, initiating the complex transfer. "We will ensure a clean break, leaving no digital trace for them to follow here." I also used that time to finalize the change in my life insurance policy. I want the sole beneficiary changed from Tiffany and Jake to the Kwicham Sok Ngoi Kau Toi Vojiaku, the senior dignity foundation in the city. The paperwork must be processed by the end of the day. Brenda looked up from her screen, her eyes filled with a new level of respect. "Eleanor, that's incredibly generous. But are you absolutely certain? This is a substantial policy." "I am certain, Brenda," I stated, the image of Tiffany's callous laughter echoing in my mind. "My life's work will not be paid out as a bonus for attempted patricide. If they intended to benefit from my death, let them find that benefit has gone to those who truly deserve a life, free from neglect and abuse." As the transaction completed, and I held the receipt confirming the security of my remaining wealth, a profound sense of closure washed over me. Tiffany and Jake's first line of attack, financial control, had been systematically dismantled. They had gained $8,750, but in doing so, they had triggered a chain reaction that would cost them everything. I left the bank not just as a victim who secured her money, but as a warrior who had drawn first blood. My next target, the county clerk's office and the accomplice, Cynthia. The legal net was beginning to tighten. My heart still felt like a piece of cold marble, but my mind was sharp, driven by an unyielding focus. Securing the financial proof was merely the prelude. Now I had to sever the legal infrastructure of their plot. This required a face-to-face confrontation with the weakest link in their chain, Cynthia. Cynthia was Tiffany's second cousin, a woman of brittle nerves and a habit of overspending, precisely the profile for a conspirator easily turned. She worked as a clerk in the records department at the county clerk's office, the very department responsible for recording property deeds. She was the one who had been promised the $500 bribe to facilitate the fraudulent transfer of my home. I knew that confronting her at her workplace, without warning, would maximize my psychological advantage. I drove to the county building, navigating the labyrinthine parking structure with a clarity I hadn't possessed in years. As I walked through the heavy glass doors and past the security checkpoint, I felt like a spy entering enemy territory. I found Cynthia hunched over a stack of documents, her desk piled high with folders. She wore a thin, nervous smile when she saw me, a pathetic attempt at maintaining the facade of normalcy. "Didi, Eleanor! What a surprise. What brings you down here?" she stammered, frantically trying to shuffle a thick manila folder under a pile of less important papers. I didn't smile. I leaned in close, resting my hands on the edge of her desk, adopting a tone that was soft, controlled, and utterly devastating. "Don't bother hiding the folder, Cynthia. I know exactly what's inside. It contains the forged deed application for my property, the one you were preparing to illegally execute for my daughter." Cynthia's face drained of color, going from a pale pink to an alarming mottled white. She looked around wildly, terrified that a supervisor might overhear. "I don't know what you're talking about, Eleanor. I just handle public records. That's my job." I pulled out my phone and placed it gently on her desk. The screen displaying the file name of the audio recording, Tiffany Confession, Raw. "Don't lie to me, Cynthia," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper of steel, an intimacy that made the threat far more potent. "I know everything. I know about the $500 bribe. I know about the forged signatures and the fraudulent medical reports Tiffany pressured you to procure through your contacts. And I have the entire unedited recording of Tiffany detailing your involvement, where she names you explicitly." Cynthia's professional composure collapsed instantly. She began to tremble, her hands gripping the edge of the desk so tightly her knuckles were white. The years of anxiety and fear of exposure suddenly boiled over. "Oh God, Eleanor, please. Don't tell my supervisor! I'll lose my job! I have 2 kids," she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Tiffany promised me it was safe. She told me you were already showing signs of forgetting things, that it was for your own good." "Save the excuses, Cynthia," I interrupted, cutting through the self-pity with surgical precision. "Tiffany used you, just as she tried to use me. She preyed on your weakness and your financial desperation. She views everyone as a means to an end, including her own mother and her own cousin." I then presented her with the new choice, the same one I had mentally prepared, a choice between self-preservation and becoming an indicted co-conspirator. "This is what is going to happen," I stated, leaning in until our eyes locked. "You have 2 options and only 2. Option 1, I walk out of here, I take this audio recording and I hand it to the district attorney along with the proof of the forged bank documents. You will be indicted for conspiracy, falsification of public records, and accessory to elder fraud. You will go to prison and you will lose your children." I paused, letting the reality of prison sink into her soul. "Option 2, I continued, softer now, yet infinitely more dangerous. You cooperate fully with me. Right now, you will retrieve every single document Tiffany gave you, the forged reports, the deed application, everything. You will document in writing your full confession, detailing how Tiffany pressured you and what she promised you. You will do this under the supervision of the public notary I will call right now. In return, I will use your confession as evidence against them, not against you." The choice was a no-brainer. Cynthia sobbed, but she chose survival. She quickly retrieved the incriminating documents from her hidden cache and, under the scrutiny of the hastily summoned public notary, she wrote out a painful, detailed 4-page confession. She chronicled Tiffany's threats, the specific documents she was told to forge, and the names of the corrupt individuals who had provided the false medical reports claiming my senile dementia. When she handed me the signed, notarized confession, my hand closed around it like a vice. This document, combined with the voicemail and the bank's evidence of forgery, created an unbreakable legal chain. Tiffany and Jake's entire plot, financial and legal, had just been dismantled from the inside. Their accomplice had turned state's witness. I looked at Cynthia, her face a mask of ruined regret. I hope you have learned the true cost of moral compromise, Cynthia. Your desperation does not excuse your criminality, but your cooperation will prevent your complete destruction. I left the county clerk's office feeling the immense weight of the victory. I was no longer Eleanor, the vulnerable widow. I was Eleanor, the meticulously prepared survivor, armed with a three-pronged arsenal of evidence. Digital, the voicemail; financial, the bank forgery; and legal, Cynthia's confession. It was time to introduce this arsenal to the only man capable of wielding it against my children, the legendary trial lawyer, Mr. Harrison Ford. My vengeance would not be spiteful. It would be professional. The legal strategy needed to be executed by a professional of impeccable reputation, someone who specialized not just in law, but in the intricate psychological warfare of the courtroom. I was introduced to Mr. Harrison Ford through Brenda at the bank, who assured me he was the county's leading expert in elder law and financial fraud. Our first meeting took place that same afternoon in his office, a space of hushed elegance and quiet power located on the top floor of a downtown skyscraper. Harrison Ford was not what I expected. He was a man in his late 50s, silver-haired, with piercing, intelligent eyes that seemed to analyze my soul rather than just my words. He listened to my story with an unwavering clinical focus, his hand resting lightly on the notarized stack of evidence I had laid before him. I began by playing the voicemail. As Tiffany's cold, contemptuous laughter filled the elegant office, the atmosphere shifted. Mr. Ford didn't flinch, but I saw a muscle twitch in his jaw, a subtle human reaction that reassured me. When the audio ended, the silence was profound. "Mrs. Eleanor," he said, finally leaning back in his leather chair, a slow, deliberate movement. "In 25 years of prosecuting white-collar crime and elder abuse, this is the most brazen, self-incriminating piece of evidence I have ever encountered. Your daughter's negligence has gifted us the entire case." I presented the rest of the file. Brenda's detailed affidavit concerning the forged power of attorney, the documentation of the $8,750 in stolen funds, and most crucially, the 4-page, tear-stained confession from Cynthia. I also included the original medical reports Tiffany had tried to use, along with the appointment date she had set up to drop me off at St. Jude home. Mr. Ford didn't look at the evidence as much as he read between the lines, synthesizing the narrative of betrayal. "They didn't just want your money, Eleanor. They wanted your existence erased. This is a cold-blooded attempt at civil and financial patricide. We will not treat this as a simple dispute. We will prosecute this as a full-scale criminal conspiracy." I felt a surge of strength. "Mr. Ford, I don't want a long, drawn-out court battle. I want a thunderclap. I want the truth to be revealed in the most shocking, undeniable way possible, and I want them to face immediate consequences." He smiled, a professional, dangerous glint in his eyes. "I understand. We will use the element of surprise and the overwhelming weight of the evidence. There will be no slow reveal. We will administer the entire dose at once." We spent the next 2 hours crafting the house ambush, the strategy for the following day. We determined that the most powerful setting for the confrontation was my own living room, the very place where they had spent months plotting their treachery. "We need witnesses of absolute authority, Eleanor," Mr. Ford explained. "I will bring the public notary to witness the serving of the civil suit documents and to legally certify their immediate reaction. More importantly, I will arrange for 2 officers from the Sheriff's Financial Crimes Unit to be present, not just for security, but to officially witness their verbal and physical responses to the evidence. If they attempt to destroy evidence, flee, or threaten you, they will be arrested immediately." The meticulousness of the plan was reassuring, but the emotional preparation was all mine. How do I maintain my composure, Mr. Ford? I worry I will break down, or my anger will overshadow the facts. Mr. Ford looked at me, a flicker of genuine empathy in his sharp eyes. "Eleanor, your composure is the greatest weapon you possess. They expect weakness, tears and confusion, the senile old woman of their fabrication. When you stand up, dressed immaculately, calm, and present the evidence with clear, authoritative command, that contrast will shatter them. You are no longer their victim. You are the impartial judge of their fate. He then addressed the crucial issue of the fraudulent medical reports. They plan to use their reports to declare you incompetent. We must preempt this. I need you to undergo a full, independent psychological and cognitive evaluation tonight. I will arrange an emergency appointment with Dr. Raymond Morales, the top geriatric specialist at General Hospital. His report, confirming your perfect mental health, will not only preempt their defense, but will become Exhibit A in proving their malicious intent. I agreed immediately. That night, instead of preparing dinner for my treacherous children, I was undergoing a battery of cognitive tests. I performed flawlessly. Dr. Morales's report, faxed to Mr. Ford before midnight, stated unequivocally that Eleanor possessed a clarity and reasoning ability superior to the average for her age, and confirmed that the earlier reports were baseless and medically fraudulent. As I lay in my own bed that night, the contrast between my quiet, determined planning and the unsuspecting sleep of Tiffany and Jake down the hall was almost unbearable. They were sleeping the sleep of the wicked, secure in their impending victory. I was sleeping the sleep of a determined warrior, ready for the dawn. The stage was set. Tomorrow, the final crushing curtain would rise on the most agonizing performance of my life. The morning of the confrontation dawned bright and deceptively peaceful. I woke up at 6 a.m., my mind as clear as the autumn air. There was no room for anxiety. Every nerve ending was focused on the execution of the plan. I meticulously reviewed my wardrobe, settling on the immaculate charcoal suit again, a subtle, unadorned uniform of authority. I applied my makeup with careful precision, ensuring that my eyes, though filled with decades of pain, conveyed only clarity and unwavering resolve. I needed to look like a woman fully in command of her faculties, the precise opposite of the senile figure they had manufactured. When I entered the kitchen, Tiffany and Jake were already seated at the breakfast table, a scene of domestic tranquility that was a grotesque lie. Tiffany was scrolling through her phone, a look of smug anticipation on her face. Jake was reading the morning paper, occasionally offering a bland pleasantry. "Good morning, Mom," Tiffany chirped, her voice falsely buoyant. "Did you sleep well?" "Soundly, honey," I replied, pouring myself a cup of coffee. For the first time in months, I felt a deep peace. I suppose knowing that justice is on its way allows one to rest. The comment was pointed, but they were too blinded by their own arrogance to notice the subtle shift in my tone. They exchanged a brief, conspiratorial glance, clearly interpreting my justice comment as misplaced religious rambling or a sign that the senile label they had fabricated was working perfectly. "That's wonderful, Eleanor," Jake offered, his tone patronizing. "Just try to take it easy today. Those visitors you mentioned, what exactly are they coming for?" I smiled slowly, the gesture feeling cold on my lips. "Oh, you'll see. They are professionals. They are coming to help us clarify some important things about our family's future. Jake, things that have been hidden for far too long." They tried a few more times to probe for information, but I remained an enigma, vague, calm, and utterly impenetrable. My silence and composure were doing exactly what Mr. Ford had predicted, forcing them into a state of nervous anticipation mixed with dismissive complacency. They truly believed I was merely setting up a meeting with a financial planner or an in-home care provider. The minutes dragged by, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension. I could feel the electricity building in the air, the physical manifestation of the storm about to break. I watched Tiffany constantly checking her watch, no doubt anxious to finalize their errands, the final steps in their plot to institutionalize me. Then, precisely at 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. It was a clear, sharp chime that resonated through the false calm of the house like a gunshot. "I'll get it," I announced, rising swiftly before either Tiffany or Jake could react. I needed to be the one to open the door, to control the scene's introduction. I walked to the front door, pausing only a moment to take a deep, centering breath. This was it. The moment of truth. I opened the door. Standing on my threshold, impeccably dressed and radiating quiet authority, were Mr. Harrison Ford, the public notary, and the 2 uniformed officers from the Financial Crimes Unit. The visual impact was immediate and overwhelming. "Good morning, Miss Eleanor," Mr. Ford said, his voice carrying just enough authority to be heard in the living room. "We've come to execute the orders we discussed yesterday." The moment the legal team stepped into my home, the atmosphere shattered. Tiffany and Jake, hearing Mr. Ford's formal address and seeing the police uniforms, shot up from the sofa, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute confusion and dawning horror. "Mom, what is going on?" Tiffany cried out, her voice cracking. "Who are these people? Did you call the police?" I walked back into the living room, my gaze fixed on my children, my body language projecting an unassailable strength. I held up my hand, silencing their frantic questions. "Sit down," I told them, my voice perfectly modulated, devoid of hysteria, yet carrying an authority they had never, in 35 years, heard from me before. "It's time for you to know the truth about the storm you spent months brewing." Mr. Ford cleared his throat, his presence filling the room, pushing their panicked energy into a corner. He was the voice of the law, the dispassionate executor of justice. "Ms. Tiffany and Mr. Jake," he began, his voice slow and deliberate, ensuring every word landed with crushing weight. "I am here on behalf of Miss Eleanor to inform you that we have discovered irrefutable, documented and confessed evidence of fraud, falsification of documents, and conspiracy to commit illegal appropriation against her." Their faces turned completely, sickeningly white. The blood drained so thoroughly that their expressions were masks of pure, visceral shock. The curtain had risen. The brutal performance was underway. Tiffany and Jake stood petrified, their bodies rigid with disbelief. They had lived for months in the blissful, arrogant certainty that they held all the cards, that I was merely a frail, forgetful obstacle to be swept aside. The sight of a trial lawyer, a public notary, and 2 uniformed officers standing in my living room, the scene of their quiet, smug planning, was a surreal, impossible nightmare come true. "What are you talking about?" Tiffany stammered, her voice thin and reedy. "We would never do anything like that. This is some kind of mistake." "It is no mistake, Ms. Tiffany," Mr. Ford replied, his voice firm. "The evidence is overwhelming and entirely self-produced." He then gestured towards me. I stepped forward, holding my phone up slightly. The light reflecting off the screen was blindingly bright. My expression was one of profound, sorrowful clarity, not anger. "Tiffany," I said, my voice quiet, almost heartbreakingly gentle. "Do you want me to play for everyone present the voice message you accidentally sent me yesterday? The one where you detail every single step of your plan to steal my house, fake my dementia, and cheer my eventual death?" The air was sucked out of the room. I saw all the comprehension of their fatal error flash across Tiffany's eyes. The realization that their perfect plan had been discovered not by my intelligence, but by their own colossal negligence. Her face crumpled, instantly transforming from indignant denial to pure animal panic. "No, Mom, don't! That's not what you think!" she cried, lunging forward slightly. But one of the officers shifted subtly, blocking her path. "Relax, honey," I told her, my voice turning cold. "This is just getting started. Sit down and listen to everything you planned for your mother." I pressed the play button. The recording was crystal clear. "Jake, I swear I cannot stand having the old woman in the house for another day. She's a total nuisance." The words, spoken by her own voice, filled the room, amplified by the heavy silence. I watched Tiffany's face completely fall apart. She was breathing rapidly, shallow gasps that did nothing to quell the terror in her chest. Jake, meanwhile, tried desperately to maintain a facade of outraged innocence. But his hands, resting on the back of the sofa, were visibly trembling. The audio continued its devastating, clinical narration. The 800-month cost of my replacement. The $500 bribe for the deed transfer. The meticulous instruction to Cynthia to get the fraudulent documents. Then came the final crushing sequence. Tuesday we'll tell her it's a routine medical appointment. And we'll just drop her off. And if something happens to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, it really wouldn't be so bad. We need that payout. The recording clicked off. The resulting silence was heavier than the audio had been, a monumental weight of exposed guilt. Jake finally broke the stillness, standing up abruptly and pointing a shaking finger at Mr. Ford. This is a setup. This audio is edited. You're manipulating her. We would never do this. We were talking about her care, not a setup. Mr. Ford's smile was chillingly professional. Mr. Jake, your denials are noted, but you are protesting the wrong part of the evidence. We haven't even gotten to the most interesting exhibit yet. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick document. This is the complete, signed, and notarized confession of Ms. Cynthia Bell, second cousin of Ms. Tiffany, who works at the County Clerk's office. I met Tiffany's eyes again. Her betrayal of me had been immense, but the betrayal of her accomplice, who had just sacrificed her own freedom to save herself, was the final confirmation of their moral bankruptcy. Tiffany's expression shifted from panic to a look of pure, agonizing defeat. The game was truly over. In this confession, Ms. Bell details exactly how Ms. Tiffany pressured her to forge official property documents, how you secured the fraudulent medical reports, and how you plan to use these documents to have Miss Eleanor declared mentally incompetent and stripped of all civil rights, Mr. Ford stated, his voice cutting through Jake's feeble protestations. Cynthia's a liar. She made all that up to save her own skin. Tiffany screamed desperately. I remained calm. Oh, really, honey? Because I also happened to have the complete recorded conversation I had with Cynthia yesterday in her office. I pressed play on a different recording, and Cynthia's tearful voice, detailing every coercive interaction with Tiffany, confirmed every word of the written confession. Jake sank back onto the sofa, his head dropping into his hands. This is a nightmare, he mumbled. It all got out of control. No, Jake, I said firmly, walking toward him. My voice was filled with a sorrowful authority. This is not a nightmare. This is justice. A nightmare was living in my own house, feeling like a prisoner. Listening to you talk about me as if I were a nuisance. Watching you plot to steal everything I've worked for in my life. Their control, their arrogance. Their entire scheme was now reduced to nothing but incriminating noise in my quiet living room. The silence after the confession audio was complete was a heavy, suffocating thing. Jake and Tiffany were cornered animals, their denial mechanism collapsing under the sheer weight of irrefutable, multi-layered evidence. They had planned for every contingency except the one that mattered most: my intelligence and their own carelessness. Mr. Ford didn't allow the silence to linger. He was a prosecutor, not a therapist. We will now address the issue of the fraudulent medical reports, he stated, picking up another folder. These are the documents you commissioned, Ms. Tiffany, claiming that Miss Eleanor suffers from senile dementia and is incapable of making decisions for herself. This was the linchpin of your guardianship strategy. He held up the documents, which purported to be from a reputable local clinic. Tiffany's eyes darted from the papers to Mr. Ford's face, searching desperately for a crack in his armor. However, Mr. Ford continued, his voice rising with powerful authority, Miss Eleanor voluntarily underwent a full, independent psychological and cognitive evaluation yesterday, conducted by Dr. Raymond Morales, a highly respected geriatric specialist at General Hospital. He pulled out the official, stamped report, Dr. Morales's findings. The results show conclusively that Miss Eleanor is in perfect mental condition with a clarity and reasoning ability superior to the average for her age. This proves that all previous reports you intended to use were fabricated for the sole purpose of committing criminal fraud. That was the final structural blow. Tiffany had been fighting the moral charges. Now, the legal foundation of her entire plot had been pulverized. She began to cry, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of raw, self-pitying failure. Mom, please, she pleaded, looking at me, her eyes red and streaming. We just wanted to take care of you. We truly thought it would be better for you to be in a place where they would attend to you professionally. You were getting so forgetful. Stop lying, Tiffany, I interrupted, my composure finally breaking, a flicker of white-hot anger escaping. Enough with the calculated deceit. Forgetful? You invented those stories to justify your avarice. I still manage my own finances, I cook my own food, I maintain this entire house, and I've continued to help you financially every time you asked. You know what truly hurts the most? I walked toward her, standing just a few feet away. My voice dropped back to a chilling whisper. It's not the $8,150 you stole. It's not the planned betrayal of the house. What hurts the most is knowing that for all these months, while I hugged you and told you how much I loved you, you were calculating how much money you were going to make from my death. You saw my life not as a gift, but as a financial investment with an overdue maturity date. Tiffany broke down completely, a hysterical, wrenching sound filling the room. I'm sorry, Mom. We were desperate for money. We had so many debts. We didn't know what else to do. Desperation does not justify betrayal, I told her firmly. If you needed money, you could have asked me honestly. My entire life, I have given you everything I have. But instead of trusting my love, you decided to steal from me, assassinate my character, and destroy my freedom. The police officer, who had stood silently witnessing the entirety of this devastating family drama, stepped forward with handcuffs in his hand. Miss Eleanor, the officer asked, his voice low and professional. Do you wish to proceed with the arrests based on the evidence of grand theft, conspiracy, and attempted elder abuse? I looked at my daughter, who was now clinging weakly to Jake, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. For a moment, a sharp maternal pang of pain shot through me, the natural instinct to protect my child, regardless of her flaws. But then I recalled the sound of her laughter in the audio, her cold analysis of my death as a payout, the casual cruelty of her betrayal. That motherly instinct was extinguished, replaced by the profound, primal need for self-preservation and justice. Yes, officer, I replied, my voice steady, firm, and ringing with finality. Proceed with the arrests. Witnessing my own daughter and son-in-law being handcuffed in my living room was the most devastating image I had experienced in my 66 years. Mom, please, Tiffany screamed as the officer led her away. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. I'm the only thing you have. Her words were the final, bitter irony. She had been the one who decided I had no place in her world. Jake, on the other hand, merely shot me a look of pure, distilled hatred as he passed. This isn't over, you crazy old woman, he hissed. You're going to pay for ruining our lives. His threat didn't scare me. It simply confirmed that by exposing them, I had saved myself. The house was left in a monumental silence, the silence of a battlefield. After the last shots have been fired, there were silence that descended upon my house after the police cars pulled away was initially a profound, the first true peace I had known in months. I walked through the living room, no longer feeling the chilling presence of hidden malice. The ghost of their conspiracy had been exorcised, but that hard-won peace was brutally short-lived. The next day, the true nature of Tiffany and Jake's wickedness was revealed as they launched a campaign of terror and character assassination designed to ruin my reputation and discredit my testimony in court. The first volley was fired on social media. Tiffany, likely acting through a friend or a new burner account, flooded local community groups with vitriolic posts. The narrative was simple, yet devastatingly effective. My mother is mentally ill and falsely accused us. My mother, Eleanor, suffers from severe, undiagnosed senile dementia and has falsely accused her devoted children of theft, the post read, crafted with a nauseating mixture of feigned concern and blatant lies. She is so confused that she doesn't recognize her own family. Please, if you see her alone on the street, contact us immediately, because she shouldn't be unsupervised. The posts included photos of me, taken covertly over the past few months, images where I looked tired, distracted, or simply deep in thought, which they had edited and framed to appear as evidence of mental decline. The comments from strangers were a torrent of judgment and misplaced sympathy. Poor woman, she looks very confused. How terrible for a mother to accuse her own children. They should seek professional help for the poor old dear. My neighbor, Mrs. Rose, who had lived across the street for 30 years, came to my door, her face etched with worry. "Eleanor, honey, are you all right? I saw some truly ugly things online about you and Tiffany." "What is happening?" I had to explain the whole agonizing truth, showing her the police reports, the bank affidavit, and Dr. Morales's clean bill of health, just so she could understand that this was a calculated smear campaign. But the harassment quickly escalated beyond the digital sphere. The phone calls started coming in at all hours. Anonymous, chilling voices insulting me, threatening me, and accusing me of destroying my own family for money. "You're a miserable old woman," a female voice screamed at 3:00 a.m. "I hope you die alone and abandoned, just like you deserve." Worse, strangers began showing up at my house. Fake social workers claiming they'd received reports that I was in danger. Aggressive salespeople insisting I purchase overpriced security systems because a single, vulnerable elderly woman is an easy target, and even people introducing themselves as distant. Relatives who had come to verify my mental state before I could sign away the family fortune. Mr. Ford explained that this was a common, desperate legal tactic. "Ms. Eleanor, they are trying to create a record, real-world evidence, that you actually do have mental problems. It's designed to confuse you, wear you down, and discredit your testimony in court when the time comes. This is a common tactic when the accused have no solid legal defense. But what wounded me most were the anonymous letters that began arriving in my mailbox. They were not about money or law. They were pure poison aimed directly at my soul. "You are a failed mother," one note read. "You raised a daughter who hates you so much she'd rather see you dead. Think about what you did wrong." Another was even crueler, attacking my decades of sacrifice. "You worked as a servant your whole life. And for what? For your daughter to despise you. You were a fool who let herself be used." The words were calculated to shatter my self-esteem, to make me doubt the very core of my being. They attacked not just my current decision, but my entire lifetime of maternal sacrifice. One night, reading a particularly vicious letter while sitting alone on my kitchen floor, the same spot where I first heard the voicemail, I completely broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried since my own mother died decades ago. What did I do wrong? I asked myself over and over, rocking back and forth in the desolate silence. How could I have raised a daughter who became this monster? For the first time since the arrests, I considered surrender. Perhaps it would be easier to drop all charges, forgive Tiffany, and try to rebuild something, anything, from the wreckage. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe they did love me in their own twisted way. Just as I reached for the phone to call Mr. Ford and tell him to drop the lawsuit, my hand brushed against a small, velvet chest hidden beneath my kitchen counter, my memory box. I remembered the final lines of my mother's letter to me, written just before she passed. I needed to see it. I needed to know what my own mother, a woman who knew the true meaning of hardship, would advise. I climbed slowly to my feet, my legs shaking, and retrieved the small, worn velvet chest. Inside, among faded photographs and a lock of my husband's hair, was the letter. It was written on brittle yellowed paper in my mother's shaky, beautiful script, dating back to when Tiffany was just 8 years old. "My dearest Eleanor," the letter began, "if you are reading this, I am no longer with you, but I want you to know that I am immensely proud of the woman and mother you have become. You raised Tiffany with so much love and dedication. I am sure she will be a good woman who will honor you for life." Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to continue reading, knowing the true counsel was yet to come. But if things ever get difficult, if someone tries to hurt you or take advantage of your good heart, remember this. You are stronger than you think. Do not allow anyone, my darling, not even your own daughter, to trample on your dignity. The words were a balm, a lifeline thrown across a tempestuous sea. But the final lines were the most potent, the most clarifying, and the most devastatingly true. True love never seeks to destroy. True love never seeks to steal. True love never seeks to humiliate. Eleanor, you deserve respect. You deserve genuine affection. You deserve to live your final years in peace and dignity. If someone cannot give you that, then they do not deserve to have you in their life, no matter how much blood you share with them." The message was a thunderclap of clarity. My mother was right. What Tiffany felt for me was not love. It was economic convenience disguised as filial affection. That profound truth extinguished the last flickering ember of my doubt. I would not succumb to emotional blackmail. I would fight. The next morning, I called Mr. Ford. "Attorney," I said, my voice ringing with a conviction I hadn't felt in weeks. "I want you to proceed with all charges. I am not going to drop anything. I want this case to go all the way." "I'm glad to hear that, Miss Eleanor," he replied, sounding genuinely relieved. "Because I have some important news. Tiffany and Jake are trying to reach an out-of-court settlement. They want to avoid a public trial at all costs. The evidence is simply too strong." "What kind of settlement?" I asked, already formulating my counter-demands. "They are willing to return the $8,750 they stole, pay $15,000 more in damages, and commit to never contacting you again, in exchange for you dropping the criminal charges." I thought about the proposal. It offered money and immediate freedom from harassment, but it lacked something crucial: the restoration of my character. "Mr. Ford," I finally said, laying down my final terms, "I accept the financial settlement, but with one additional non-negotiable condition. I want them to sign a full, detailed confession of everything they did, publicly admitting that I am mentally competent and that all their accusations about my mental health were false. And I want that confession to be published in the exact same local forums and social media groups where they defamed me." Mr. Ford chuckled, a sound of genuine admiration. "That is genius, Eleanor. That will completely clear your reputation and prevent any further smear campaigns. It will effectively force them to publicly indict themselves." A week later, Tiffany and Jake signed the agreement. I recovered the $8,750 plus the $15,000 in damages. More importantly, the public confession was devastating for them and liberating for me. We, Tiffany Williams and Jake Williams, admit that we falsely accused Ms. Eleanor of having mental problems. We admit that we planned to steal her property and that we created fraudulent documents to declare her incompetent. Ms. Eleanor is in perfect mental condition, and we invented those stories to justify our criminal actions. That day, 1 month after hearing the audio that changed my life, I realized I had achieved the impossible. I had defeated those who tried to destroy me, and I had done it with intelligence, dignity, and by always sticking to the law. But my story wasn't over. My most satisfying revenge was still to come, and it was entirely legal and meticulously planned. "Mr. Ford," I said, meeting his eyes across the desk, "during your investigation, did you happen to notice anything interesting about Tiffany and Jake's financial background that might interest the Internal Revenue Service, IRS?" Mr. Ford smiled, a wide, professional grin. "I did, Eleanor. I noticed a few discrepancies in their reported income over the last 3 years. A few unreported side jobs, undeclared online sales. Enough to raise a few flags." "As a responsible citizen," I replied, a cold smile touching my lips, "I believe it is my duty to report any tax evasion I am aware of. After all, we all must contribute fairly to the country's upkeep." A week later, the IRS initiated a full audit. The debt, back taxes, and penalties amounted to a staggering $35,000. They had no choice but to sell their car, pawn their jewelry, and take out high-interest loans. Their ruin, both financial and moral, was complete. With the legal agreement signed and my reputation completely restored by their own forced confession, the time came to make the most important decisions of my new life. I was no longer the naive Eleanor who had allowed her kindness to be abused. I was a 66-year-old woman who had learned that true strength doesn't come from enduring abuse, but from defending yourself with dignity. My first act was decisive. I finalized the change to my will. I summoned Mr. Ford and officially dictated my final wishes. "Attorney, I want all my assets, including this house and all my savings, to be donated to the Senior Dignity Foundation, the organization that helps older citizens abandoned or defrauded by their own families." The estate was considerable, approximately $490,000. I stipulated that if Tiffany or Jake ever attempted to contest the will, they would automatically lose any right to receive even a single penny, invoking a harsh no-contest clause that ensured my wishes would be respected. My second decision was to move. I could no longer live in the house where I had been betrayed, where I had heard my own daughter plot my destruction. It was a beautiful house, but it was haunted by the ghost of their greed. I sold the property quickly, using the proceeds to purchase the perfect, smaller apartment in a new residential complex designed for active, independent seniors. The apartment was filled with light, surrounded by peaceful gardens, and contained a community of people my age who valued independence and dignity. With the remaining funds from the sale and the legal compensation, I had more than enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I had bought my freedom, my peace, and my future. A year after the day I first heard the voicemail, my life was unrecognizable. At 67, I woke up every morning in my new bright apartment. I made coffee in my perfect small kitchen and sat on my balcony to watch the sun rise over the community garden. "Good morning, Eleanor," greeted my neighbor, Nora, a vibrant 72-year-old who had become my best friend. "Ready for our painting class today?" I smiled, remembering how I had enrolled in painting classes and discovered a natural talent for vibrant landscapes. My paintings now decorated my walls, conveying a profound sense of peace. I had also joined the volunteer group at the Senior Dignity Foundation, working 3 days a week helping other older citizens who had suffered exactly what I had. "Eleanor," one recipient told me, "you understand our pain because you lived it. You are a beacon of hope." My work at the foundation gave me a purpose I never thought I would have. I was no longer measuring my self-worth by how much I could sacrifice. I was measuring it by how much I could help others reclaim their boundaries and dignity. As for Tiffany and Jake, I occasionally received news of them. They had lost their car, their credit was ruined, and they were forced to take low-paying jobs just to chip away at the IRS debt. Their marriage, built on the shifting sand of greed, was in crisis. They fought constantly, blaming each other for the ruin of their lives. 6 months after my triumphant court victory, I ran into Tiffany at the grocery store. She looked haggard, tired, and much older than her 36 years. She approached me, her eyes filled with fresh tears. "Mom," she said, her voice broken, "please forgive me. We've already paid the price. We lost everything. Isn't that punishment enough?" I looked her directly in the eye with profound, genuine pity, but without weakness. "Tiffany, I didn't punish you. The consequences of your own actions punished you. You decided to plan my destruction. I simply decided to defend myself." "But we're family," she pleaded, reaching out a tentative hand. "Blood is blood, Mom. You can't abandon your only daughter." "Blood doesn't give you the right to mistreat, steal from, or plan someone's death," I replied, my voice calm and unwavering. "For 35 years, I was your unconditional mother. For 3 months, you were my calculating executioner. I have forgiven you for my own peace of mind. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. And it certainly doesn't mean giving you another chance to destroy my life." I left her standing there, a ghost of her former, entitled self. I walked away toward my new free and dignified life. For the first time in decades, I was completely free. The life lesson I learned on that cold kitchen floor is the one I pass on to you now. To every woman who has ever sacrificed her boundaries for the sake of family. True love never seeks to destroy. True love never seeks to steal. If someone in your life is calculating your value based on their financial gain, they are not your loved one. They are your captor. Do not confuse blood relation with moral obligation. My daughter stripped me bare, but in doing so, she forced me to reclaim my inherent dignity and discover the woman I was always meant to be. Strong, independent, and fiercely protective of my peace. My house is now gone, but my soul is finally home. If this story of reclaiming dignity and setting powerful boundaries resonates with you, I urge you to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Join our community of women who are learning that sometimes The most profound act of love for our children is showing them, through clear action, that consequences are real, and the price of a mother's dignity is priceless.